지목하세요. 나는 좁은 사람이다.
There's a scene early in this film where a man grills eels in his backyard, smiling at his family, believing he has everything. He doesn't know yet that the eels are a severance gift, that the life he's holding together is already unraveling, and that in a few weeks he'll be standing in someone else's house with a hammer in his hand, trying to convince himself he has no other choice. That's the lie at the centre of Park Chan-wook's No Other Choice. Not that desperation drives people to extremes, but that we narrate our worst impulses as inevitabilities. We tell ourselves the world left us no options, when really we just couldn't stomach the ones we had. If films like this one, stories that sit with you uncomfortably long after the end, are the kind of thing you're here for, subscribing helps us keep making these essays. No Other Choice doesn't feel like a thriller. It feels like watching someone drown in slow motion while everyone around him pretends the water isn't rising. There's a brittleness to it, a quiet desperation that hums underneath every scene. It's funny in the way dark things are funny, not because they're absurd, but because the alternative is too bleak to sit with. Park Chan-wook has always been a director who understands that violence and comedy live in the same neighbourhood, and here he lets them bleed into each other until you're not sure whether to laugh or look away. The setup is deceptively simple. Man-soo is a paper mill manager with 25 years of loyalty to a company that fires him without ceremony. He's got a wife, Mary, who's practical and patient, a son, a daughter who plays cello, 2 golden retrievers, a house he bought back from his childhood, built on land that used to be his father's pig farm. Everything he's worked for, everything he is, tied to this one fragile structure of identity. Breadwinner, provider, man of the house. And then it's gone. What follows isn't a revenge thriller, it's a character study dressed up as a black comedy, and it's more interested in how Man-soo justifies his plan than in whether he succeeds. He decides to murder his competition, other unemployed men with the same qualifications, so he can take the one job left in the paper industry that might save him. He sets up a fake recruitment ad, he tracks down 2 men, Gubomo, a sad drunk whose wife can't stand to look at him anymore, and Go Sicho, a gentle shoe salesman who still dreams about paper production like it's a lost love, and he tries clumsily, desperately to kill them. But here's the thing, Park understands that most filmmakers don't. The horror isn't in the violence, it's in how reasonable it all sounds in Man-soo's head. The film opens with that barbecue. Man-soo looks up at cherry blossoms falling and says out loud, "I have it all." It's the kind of line no one says in a movie unless they're about to lose everything. And Park knows we know that. He's not hiding the tragedy. He's letting us watch Man-soo build his own trap, one satisfied smile at a time. Because Man-soo isn't a bad person. That's what makes this so uncomfortable. He's not cruel or selfish or even particularly flawed. He's just small. A man who confused his job with his identity, his salary with his worth. And now that both are gone, he's left staring at a version of himself he doesn't recognise. And instead of sitting with that, instead of letting himself grieve or adapt or grow, he decides the problem is external. If he can just get the job back, everything will make sense again. That's the lie, the one we all tell ourselves when the ground shifts, that if we can just get back to where we were, we'll be okay. That the life we had was the only life worth living. Park doesn't judge him for it, he just watches, and that's what makes it so devastating. There's a moment midway through the film where Man-soo is staking out one of his targets and he slips in the mud. It's played for laughs. Lee Byung-hun is doing full physical comedy here, stumbling and flailing like a man who's never committed a crime in his life. But underneath the humour is something sadder. He's bad at this, not just the killing, but the lying, the sneaking, the pretending. He's someone he's not. Every time he tries to act like a man in control, the world reminds him he isn't. And that's the real tension in the film, not whether he'll succeed, but whether he'll recognise what he's becoming in time to stop. There's a scene where Mary calls him on FaceTime at the worst possible moment again, and you see it in his face. The gap between the man she thinks she married and the man he's turning into. She's solving problems, cutting costs, being pragmatic. She's adapted, and he can't stand it, because if she's fine without his salary, without his role as provider, then what is he? Park stages this with his usual elegant, tight frames, sharp angles, a camera that knows exactly where to linger. There's a sequence where Man-soo talks to his daughter while she swings in the garden, and all we see are her yellow boots bobbing in and out of frame. It's such a small choice, but it says everything. She's there, but he's not really seeing her. He's somewhere else in his head, constructing a narrative where murder is the only option. What's fascinating is how the film refuses to let Mansu's plan unfold cleanly. In most thrillers, there's a logic to escalation. One kill leads to another, stakes rise, tension builds, but no other choice keeps pulling focus. Mansu stalls. He hesitates. Other subplots bloom like weeds. His wife going back to work at a dental clinic. His jealousy of the handsome dentist. His son accused of theft. A strange moment in the greenhouse that spirals into a surreal dream sequence. The film becomes less about the murders and more about the life Mansu is trying to hold together while committing them. And that shift away from thriller logic and towards something messier, more human, is where Park's instincts shine. Because the point isn't the plot, it's the erosion, the way a man can justify anything if he's desperate enough. The way no other choice becomes a mantra, a shield, a way to avoid looking at the real problem, that he tied his entire sense of self to something external, and now that it's gone, he's unmoored. There's tenderness in how Park treats the other men too, Gubamo drinking himself numb while his wife performs theatrical monologues in the living room, trying to shake him awake. Go Zijo! Talking about paper production with the kind of reverence most people reserve for art. These aren't obstacles, they're mirrors. Men who lost the same thing Mansu did, who are coping or not coping in their own broken ways, and Mansu standing over them with intent to kill is really just staring at versions of himself he refuses to become. The film's final act doesn't resolve cleanly, and that's intentional. Miri steps in. She fixes what Mansu couldn't. And in doing so, the film quietly dismantles the myth he's been clinging to, that his role as protector, as breadwinner, as man of the house is what holds the family together. It isn't. It never was. There's an image near the end, gleaming machinery in a paper factory, automated and efficient, and entirely devoid of human presence. And it lingers just long enough to feel like a statement. The world moved on. The job was always going to disappear. Mansu's crisis wasn't economic, it was existential, and instead of facing it, he tried to murder his way back to a version of himself that no longer existed. Park dedicates the film to Costa Gavras, who adapted the same novel 2 decades earlier, and there's something poignant in that. This story has been told before, in different countries, different contexts, and it keeps resonating because the fear at its centre is universal, that we are what we do, and if we stop doing it, we disappear. But no other choice isn't interested in answering that fear. It just wants to sit with it, to let us watch a good man make terrible decisions and ask ourselves quietly, uncomfortably, what we'd do if the ground shifted under us the same way. This is the kind of film that doesn't leave you when the credits roll. It sits there in the back of your mind, asking questions you're not sure you want to answer about identity, about masculinity, about the stories we tell ourselves to make the unbearable seem inevitable. If this essay landed the way I hoped it would, sharing it helps more than you think. And if you want more of this kind of thing, films that don't let you off easy, subscribing means we can keep making them.